I tell the story that I had an aunt who was the daughter of an imam. And she, when I was 10, 12 years old, she would take this special bag she had and she would leave the house. And one day she was going to Toledo, and I said to her, "Where are you going, Auntie?" And she said, "I'm going to go wash a dying person." And she was very responsible for shaping many of my thoughts as a child. I loved her dearly, and I looked up to her tremendously. She was a young woman. And she was the first generation here, born and raised in America. And so I thought, "You're going to go wash a dead person?" And she said, "Yes." And she had her clothing in a bag. And she said, "And one day I'm going to teach you how to do this so that you can take care of me." And then sure enough, shortly after that, within 3 years, she died. And I had never forgotten that scene. And because she was so massive in my life, she somehow gave me permission to do this work.
I'm doing this duty in hopes that there will be others that are inspired and will be able to do, reciprocate the duty back onto myself when I'm in need of it. And I thought if nobody could really step up and inspire and teach, there will be no one to wash us. And that's kind of sad. And that really motivated me to stick with it and want to help others to learn and try to overcome their fears and realize that being scared is not an excuse.
As I get older, I realize that my life is short, and I want to do what I can do to help people, and to me this is a very important thing, the ghusl and washing of the dead body, because it gives you an opportunity to help another family at a very difficult time.
You find yourself in there too, and you realize how precious life is, how easily it can be taken away, and how much we neglect it.
It's a process that is very sensitive, very sincere. It's like washing a newborn baby, being very gentle, and at the same time understanding that the soul is at a challenge, and the soul needs the understanding that we are giving it.
To make you feel you should be gentle the way you are here with everybody in your life, living life. Very gentle.
When I see the body of the deceased, then there will be no doubt in my mind that this can happen to me as well. This is the end. This is the real end. This is not a movie that I'm watching produced by Hollywood. This is not a fiction. This is a very, very true fact that I always doubt.
I initially started doing the washings, I would say, at the end of 2003. And around that time, I was kind of going through an emotional roller coaster and trying to find myself spiritually. And that was just before I had decided to go to Hajj, to do the pilgrimage in Mecca. And before that, I was studying the last verses, the last chapters of the Quran, which all revolve around death and dying and resurrection. And I was somewhat intrigued by death and dying in the afterlife, and doing something that contributed to that whole realm and learning more about it, not in a way trying to not fear it, and try to welcome it and try to accept it.
Najah was in there, and this was my first ghusl, and I did not know what to expect, and I was very scared, confused, happy, a lot of mixed emotions running through me. When I didn't know how I'd react. This is like a mother to me, and I've been with her most of my life, and I didn't, I thought I would break down, but I didn't. I just seen her, and she looked so beautiful and peaceful.
It's recommended that the family of the person give the ghusl, and the reason is because the soul knows these voices. The soul knows who's doing the washing. So the soul is comforted by those that the soul loves. And I also think that when the family is able to participate in the ghusl, that the family has a sense of closure.
What I do with the body is we take it and we wash the body with the soap and then the camphor and the cider, which are different herbs. And then we wash the body, the face, and we wash the right side and then the left side, and we dry it really well. And then wrap it in the keffin, which is the white cloth that gets when the body's put into the coffin.
I think he's doing something good, because you're supposed to. If you're able to, you should do it.
What happens in this room stays in this room. And it's a very special, it's probably the most ultimate confidentiality that can happen, because you're able to see things that the community may not know about this particular person.
Whether the person is a king or an ordinary citizen, that person will be wrapped up with the same exact
The material was very
shroud.
expensive,
And this
and so we now just
shows
use
that
plain
we
white
can
sheets.
be
Because the idea is
superior
not that we
to
go
each
down
other through
with
our
expense,
social
but we go down
status, our
as
economic
much humility.
status in this life. But when we die, we all will be going to the same destiny.
Kind of took a toll on me for the first year. Afterwards, I would, I'd be really exhausted. I would just feel just spiritually drained. And, I'd go through my crying spells. I'd go through just imagining the whole washing in my head and praying to God that I didn't make any mistakes.
I think that they would be very concerned, with most of the religions, that if you don't do things properly, that you could be jeopardizing that person or even yourself.
It's difficult at times. I mean, when you see some of the different things that the body goes through, and when it's on, when you're doing the actual ghusl. Just did one a few weeks ago where the body was leaking some fluids, and in any other case, I think it would make me feel upset or sick or different. But when I'm doing that, it just seems like it's part of doing a duty that I'm responsible to do, and it doesn't bother me.
A lot of times pressures build up, and what we try to do is, or what I try to do is, I try to release it in tears. So if it's a child or if someone that is unexpectedly died, I do choke up and I do cry. And I'm not too much of a man to not allow myself to do that.
And I tend to cradle the head when I turn, and I turn very, very gently so that they can even hear me reading dua, reading Quran for them. And I do. I'll read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakun. And I tell the soul, don't be scared, it's okay, you're fine, we're with you, you're going to be fine, Allah is with you. Because they are such a frightening, uncontrollable moment.
I was not afraid, I was terrified. But watching you, I'm at peace with myself, and it's not so bad.
I thank you very much for that, and I wish, inshallah, I hope from God, my girls, they will do that to me, because I couldn't do it for my mom. It's very important to teach our kids.
And a lot of people want to learn, but they don't get the opportunity to witness and see this.
For 25 years, I've been trying to figure out how to teach this, how to get this out, how to take the fear away from death and have it be a welcoming experience and something that's full of compassion. And I've not had that opportunity before.
Some people initially, when they hear about the washing, tend to say, I don't think I'm religious enough to do this. And I just wanted to make a point that doing washings, I mean, if you were going to wait till you thought you were religious enough, you probably would be waiting a lifetime, because nobody ever feels good enough.
I really believe that of all of the good deeds we can do on earth, at least for me, this one far surpasses everything and anything.
It's given me a better relationship with the idea of death. And I don't see it as a finite experience, but rather just a transitioning from this world into the next.
I'm looking for, God's forgiveness. I'm looking for the closeness to God, and to just be able to keep in mind that, you know, our life here, our term here is temporary. And I think that it's a benefit to me in itself to volunteer to do the washings. And it's more of a benefit for myself than it would be to accept money.
All I have to do to ground myself and make it through a very busy day is just think about this. And then I realize that whatever I'm busy about is all okay. Nothing is bigger than this, and nothing is greater than this. In Islam, the Prophet Muhammad has taught us the ritual of giving ghusl, or the washing, to the deceased. In Islam, we have this concept. It's called wajib kifai. And what that really means is that there's a collective responsibility for all Muslims to do certain duties. One of those duties happens to deal with the issues around death and dying. So there is a wajib kifai for all Muslims who are responsible for the particular deceased person, including their washing and their burial. For example, if a Muslim person dies and one person performs the ghusl for them, then all other Muslims are absolved of that collective responsibility. Therefore, it becomes imperative that Muslims throughout the world and around the world learn this tradition that has been passed down from generation to generation. What you are about to see is an actual demonstration of a ritual washing in a session that is performed for women only. The women who you will see have volunteered to learn how to perform this ghusl. The location and the setting is at a local funeral home that has accommodations which we call the Muslim washroom. We are not using a real human being. We will be using a dummy for the purposes of this demonstration. What you will see is a pre-wash or a pre-bath, and then you will see the actual ritual washing, followed by the shrouding that's necessary to complete the process. There are many questions and many dimensions to the ghusl. For the purposes of this demonstration, I want the audiences to know, the different audiences, that for Muslims who are learning to do ghusl, please check your rule book or your different schools of thought to see whether or not there are any differences. Most likely you will find none. For non-Muslims, please be aware that via the internet or other resources, you can find information that is pertinent to this demonstration. With regards to medical questions which often arise, in this demonstration you will see that we will use universal precautions for the person who is performing the washing. Some answers to some important questions. Is cremation allowable? Under no circumstance at all is cremation allowable, because that soul would see that its body is being burned, which is considered torturous to the soul, because it still has an attachment to its body. Is embalming allowable? Embalming is allowable only when the body is going to be shipped to another country and it needs to be embalmed to meet the requirement of health laws in our country, or if the body cannot be buried before the next sunset. The question of autopsy: is autopsy allowable? And the answer is only if the autopsy is performed because of legal obligations to prove the innocence of another person or to determine the cause of death. It's important to understand conceptually the ghusl is about the dignity of the human being who has died. We believe that the soul is present during this washing, and therefore all precautions must be taken to preserve the dignity of the soul of the person whom we are washing. It's really important to note that of all of the good deeds a human being can perform, that the act of performing the ghusl for another person is considered one of the greatest deeds of all. Our intention as washers is to gain closeness to God Himself, And so by performing such a noble deed, we must do it with humility and humbleness. As you join us into the ghusl room, you will see Muslim women entering with their heads bowed in humbleness and humility. The staging is exactly the staging that they will see if they were performing the ghusl for their own loved ones, or even if the ghusl was for themselves. You can have a seat over there, sister. Come on. Nadia and I are going to get dressed, and then we'll start the ghusl, inshallah. So we want to show you what we do when we get dressed. When you do ghusl, everything should be covered, not religiously, but it's the laws of America in doing ghusl. So we always wear foot covers.
And it's best to have a closed shoe.
Make it a little bit easier. And you don't have to bring these things with you. They're usually provided. You can wear anything you want. A lot of times people are so afraid because they have this image that the ghusl, the washing, is a dirty thing, and it's not a dirty thing. It's a very clean thing. So we end up looking like surgeons when we're finished. Places for your thumbs. And then it is required that you wear a face mask. And then pull the gloves all the way up on top of your gown, because this way the water doesn't get inside. And that's why the gloves are tight. So it forms a nice seal for you. So let's review the dressing process. Universal precautions are recommended and at times mandated. Hijab, or a head covering, is not mandatory. Use foot coverings over closed shoes. Cover arms with arm coverings. Wear a plastic gown to cover clothing. Wear vinyl or latex gloves. And wear a face mask. The purpose of the kaffin, or shroud, is to equalize between humanity, between the rich and between the poor. And Islam teaches us that when we come into this world, we're equal. Therefore, when we leave this world, we must also be equal. The kaffin is made of a very simple fabric, such as cotton. And unlike the kaffin for women, the kaffin of men must not be sewn or stitched. The simplicity of the kaffin reminds us that we take with us only our good deeds and nothing of a material nature. The kaffin cannot be soiled, neither with blood, urine, feces, or semen, nor should it be see-through. And it is noteworthy that people may make their own kaffin or request that their kaffin be the clothing that they wore to perform their obligatory hajj, which is called ihram, and that would also suffice. During the preparation of the kaffin, I do like to play Holy Quran. It's not mandatory. Many of the things that you'll see me do are recommended, mustahabbat, they're not wajibat. It's one size fits all women's kaffin. Much of the time it's too much material, and then we can cut from it, or sometimes we may need to add to it, but that's very rare. May slide. Just be careful. Set it in the center so that it's centered. Making sure that we don't touch the kaffan to the ground or to anything that would be considered dirty or najis. I guess slide that down. The kaffan has two wraps. So this is one wrap and this is a second wrap, in addition to the pieces that we'll show. I'd like to take it with this one. So we're going to take the two pieces together. It's a little bit tricky. These are kaffans that we make here in the United States, but there are kaffans that you can buy from the Muslim world, and people often bring their own with them, or they create their own from home, because there's no mandatory color for kaffan. However, white is, again, mustahab. And the other thing is many times people will create their own from their home because they have certain pieces that they want. So the kaffan has several pieces for women because we're doing a women's training. I get them in order. This is a chest piece. This is a hijab headpiece. This is the pants so that I know what order that I'm putting them in. This is the dress, which I would put last. And the diaper to cover the private parts. So I get everything laid out nice and neat. I push it to the side. And the reason that I get this ready first is because right now I'm clean. I have not touched the deceased, and so there's no issue with me moving. At this point, I have tahara. There's nothing that is considered unclean. Not that a dead person is considered unclean, but we have to do things ritually, right? So clean gloves can touch the kaffan, but once I've touched the person who's passed away, I don't come back to the kaffan until after the ghusl is completed. Let's review the preparation of the kaffan or shroud. Remember to always maintain tahara or ritual purity of the kaffan. Begin by preparing the two wraps. Next, order and organize the following kaffan pieces for women: the chest piece, the hijab or head covering, the pants, the dress, and the loin cloth to cover the private part. As mentioned earlier, this is a training dummy that we are using for the purposes of this ghusl. However, when you first encounter a real dead person, the body may be covered with a sheet, or perhaps the person may be in a hospital gown. It's possible that they also may be in their street clothing, and they may even be in a plastic bag, depending on how the body was received. The body may or may not be stiff at the time, depending on when that person has died. It may or may not be embalmed. It may or may not have had an autopsy. It may or may not have had serious changes in the skin color, and it may or may not even be intact. So what becomes imperative is that what you see and what you experience in this ghusl room, in this washroom, is private, it's confidential, and you must not speak to anyone about the condition of the body outside of the people who are on your team. we must remember that people die in all sorts of conditions. They may have died from homicide, they may have died in a car accident, they may have drowned to death, they may have died in a fire, or terminal illness, or what have you. So it becomes incumbent upon us as stewards for these people to be careful that we maintain the utmost confidentiality. In Islam, to break the confidentiality is a great sin. We're going to give our sister a name. Who would like to choose a name for her? Salihah. So this is Sister Salihah. And because we believe that the soul can hear, and the soul can feel, and the soul is aware of everything that's going on. It's aware of the environment, it's aware of the room, it's here, somewhere here, but we don't know where. We just know that when the soul separates the body, that it stays with the body until the time of burial. So this makes this ghusl, this washing, so important, because we become the stewards. We become responsible for this body. And the way that we do that, the gentlest way possible, with the most amount of dignity and the most amount of honor, is because we're giving voice to someone who's voiceless. And that's just so powerful. So we would uncover Salihah. And for purposes of this video, we have her covered because this is a training video. Normally, she would be uncovered, and she would have a towel here and a towel here. So just to show you what she would normally look like. Technically, Islamically, the breasts are not considered part of the private. It's not awra, because we breastfeed our children and it can be a public thing. However, out of respect for her, because if it were me, and because out of respect for the fact that many women have breast cancer, many women lose their breasts, it's a point of dignity to me. So I keep the breast covered, but it's not a necessary thing. And we keep the private covered all of the time. We never view the private, even in death. And that's one of the things that I love so much about Islam, is that even in a situation where someone has technically died, and their body may mean nothing to some, virtually, it's not like the body has the same value as it did when it was alive. But the fact that Islam says this is something private, this is something dignified, I think is really quite a beautiful thing. For Muslim women, only women should be washing women, unless she had a son. Her son could wash her. It's best that if a woman is available, women to women is best, but there's no sin or no haram in her son giving her ghusl.
What about her husband?
And her husband, in Islam we have the example that Imam Ali gave ghusl to the Prophet's daughter Fatima. The story is that she was clothed, peace and blessings be upon her. If it came to absolute, there's no other choice, the husband would be the next to give ghusl to his wife. But we do our best, and it's recommended that the family of the person give the ghusl. And the reason is because the soul knows these voices. The soul knows who's doing the washing. So the soul is comforted by those that the soul loves. And I also think that when the family is able to participate in the ghusl, that the family has a sense of closure. There's a sense of, I've done all that I can to take care of this person. And that feeling is something that I find when the grieving happens, and the grieving, will continue. When you think back to this experience, it's your mother, or it's your daughter, or it's your sister. You feel in your heart like, I did everything that I could do. And it's a real sense, I think, of healing. These are just things that I normally do. I place my hand by Salihah's head, and I would speak to her, knowing that she can very well hear me. And I would introduce myself. I would say, Sister Salihah, this is Najah. I'm going to do your ghusl. Please, I ask your forgiveness right in the beginning of this ghusl. If I hurt you, forgive me. Forgive those of us who are doing ghusl for you. and keep us in your dua. I may read surahs from Quran for her. There isn't anything mandatory that you have to read, but the surahs or the verses in our Holy Quran that are very healing, Surah Yasin, Surah Al-Fatiha, the Quls, Qul Hu Allahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, Qul A'udhu bi Rabbil Falaq. Those kinds of surahs are very healing. If the room is quiet and there's a sister who wishes to read Quran, to just have one sister reciting Quran during the ghusl is so beautiful. But if not, you can use the CDs, whatever. But I believe in having the Quran or dua supplications present during the ghusl. Normally this would be a very quiet, there's no talking when we do this because many of us are so trained that we walk in and everybody takes their position. One does the water, one does the washing, one does the drying. It requires about 3 people to do this properly and to do it gently. So once you have a team set up, a team of 3, you would walk in and you would just, everybody takes their role and it flows very, very beautifully. The pre-inspection process may require a pre-bath as well. The purpose is to remove impurities from the body. We call these impurities najasa. They are blood, urine, feces, and semen. There can also be barriers that must be removed, such as makeup and nail polish. Remove the barriers that block water from reaching the skin, but we must be very careful not to do more damage to the skin's integrity. Let me give you an example. If a patient was in a hospital and had an ulceration, and the ulceration may be covered by a protective Band-Aid or protective barrier. To remove that would cause more damage to the skin. We would not remove it. We would keep that in place and simply rinse over that Band-Aid. The preparation may also require what we call stuffing the body cavities to prevent leakage, such as urine, feces, and blood. This becomes specifically important so that we do not contaminate the kefan that we spoke about earlier. The stuffing can be cloth or it can be gauze. So let's assume that you have walked into the room and you find that the deceased is already clean. You have a clean inspection, free of any of the najasas or impurities. At that point, you may proceed to the mandatory ritual ghusl, which you will see in an upcoming segment. If, however, what you find is the body's condition to be unclean, it is highly recommended to perform the pre-bath to secure that the body is free of the impurities before we begin the mandatory ritual wash. What if you were met with a body that was in very, very poor condition, such as a person who has suffered death in a fire, or the condition of the body is such that there is tremendous leakage? In that case, another Islamic law is used, which is called tayammum, and that is something where we accomplish the use of sand or dirt to allow us to do the washing without water. In other words, tayammum is a waterless wash. We will cover the steps of tayammum in another segment. We have her face covered. Normally her face would not be covered, but again, for the purposes of training video, we have this face covered. Normally there would be no hijab. When we first begin, after we take permission from Salihah and ask forgiveness, then we begin to inspect Salihah's body. And I talked to her the whole time. I would say, Sister Salihah, I'm going to check your body, Habibti. Or just talk to her like she's in front of me, because she is in front of me. It's not uncommon for me personally to use terms of endearment, but that's because I believe the whole human family is connected and she really is a sister. We don't know how people die. We don't know what condition they die in. And Islamically, what we want to do is to prepare the body for the glory of God. So when we do the ghusl, when we're doing the washing, this wash suffices for all other washings. So that if this woman was on her menstrual cycle, I don't have to do a separate washing for her menstrual cycle. If she and her husband had had physical relationships before her death and she was unable to take a ritual shower, I don't have to give her a separate bath for that. So I would inspect her body. If there was urine, feces, nail polish, anything that would stop the water from meeting the skin, I would remove it. Sometimes when people come from hospitals, they have bandages. Sometimes they have ulcers, decubitus ulcers. We would inspect the body fully and completely. Okay. So Sister Saliha, I'm going to go ahead and check your body. I'm going to make sure that everything is okay and prepared for your ghusl. And I would go ahead and inspect and check and look and inspect her legs. Make sure that everything is okay. I would inspect her back. What I say to nurses and to healthcare professionals, when a person leaves the hospital, you should have the family inspect the body with you, because our Muslim families come to the funeral homes. And if this was your mother and you didn't know that she had a big sore in her back, and you were doing her washing, and you found a big sore in her back, and you were in the hospital with her for 2 weeks and never saw that, what is that going to create in you in this moment? Shock, and anger, and sadness, and why didn't I know about this? And what that creates is, what else didn't I know about? It creates a sense of suspicion in families. So I ask hospital staff to be very open to show families, because they are going to be able to see it. The first thing I'm going to do is not a part of the ritual ghusl, not a part of the ritual wash. I'm going to give her a regular bath with shampoo and with soap. And I'm going to make sure that there's nothing on her. Again, this is not a wajib, it's not a mandatory, it's a recommended, but it's highly recommended that you give a bath before you begin the ritual ghusl. The water is always very tricky. The water can neither be too hot nor too cold. It should be right in the middle with a little lean toward coolness. So cool, not lukewarm. And medically that makes sense, because if the body's not embalmed, then anything warm is going to do what? Create bacteria. And we're trying to not create bacteria. So even the science of how God asks us, and the sayings of the Prophet, ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, even the sayings of exactly to the detail of the temperature of the water is how fine-tuned this beautiful process is for the comfort of the human being. And when I think about the dignity associated with ghusl, I think to myself, if we can give dignity in the end of this life, then certainly we must be called upon to give dignity when people are alive. That's why I'm always talking about this human equity and this human justice and equality. And in this phase, everybody's equalized. Everybody's equalized. So this is a real eye-opener for us. It's something we really need to contemplate and think about. And before I begin her first bath, I want to show you something that's a little bit funny. These are probably about 40 years old. When I was 15, it's the first bucket and the first pan that I used to do ghusl. So I've been using these for about 25 years. You can use anything. So we're going to give her a bath. We usually use non-animal soap. I'll give Nadia a piece. And we're going to assume that Saliha only has her no hijab, face is uncovered, the chest is covered with a towel, and the genitals are covered. But otherwise, she would not have anything on her. Okay? Saliha, we're going to begin your ghusl. We're going to begin to give you a bath, and inshallah you will forgive us, and we hope that it feels really good for you. Nadia, come on over to this side. Nadia is going to begin to wash your hair. Just gently close the eyes and pinch the nose so that the water doesn't go into the nostrils. We're going to rinse your body, Saliha. And Nadia is going to follow me with the soap. And I'm going to gently rinse her as Nadia washes her body. We will turn away anytime we're washing the genitalia. Nadia will go to the other side.
Do you use shampoo in the hair or just soap?
You can use shampoo as long as it's non-animal. You can use rags. I tend to not use cloth because the body's very, very sensitive and the soul can feel every single movement. So I tend to use just my hands. And we do Nadia's going very gently just to show you, but we really would be washing the body in any spots that are available, that need extra care. We're going to turn our heads away, and we are going to really wipe and clean inside the genitalia and ask for forgiveness. But because smell and feces and urine and blood, this is a vehicle, we want to be sure that we're very, very clean in this area. Nadia will place the hose here, and we'll just run the water. Obviously, because we use the genitalia, we would throw this rag away. We'll place the hose here. And we're going to go ahead and turn her towards Nadia, and I'll do her back. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Always invoking the name of Allah, the name of God, wherever we can. If you have a good grip with her. Usually there'd be another person standing right here who would hold the head and hold them close, because it's scary to be turned, because you have no control. And somebody would be following with the hose as well. We would do the same thing. We would completely cleanse the body. When I'm in this position, now the body's been washed. What I want to do now is I want to move to a stage of tahara. The less you turn the body, the better. So, in this position, I'm going to get rid of my soap, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that she's on her side, and I'm going to start to rinse the table. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And make tahara of the table. I want the table to be rid of any urine, any feces, any blood, because I'm going to begin her ritual ghusl. And we're going to turn her over, and I'm going to give Nadia the hose, and she's going to hose that side of the table. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Forgive us, Saliha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All the way down, Nancy? Completely down? Completely? Okay. Gently turn her back. The table is clean, but now we need tahara of everything. So what I like to do is just make everything tahar, everything that is ritually, universally clean and pure. In my heart, I'm reading Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God. Though it's not mandatory, it's just the way that we do things. You just feel better about doing things like that, but not mandatory. Let's review how to inspect the body. Remember to inspect the full length of the body, both front and back. The body should be free of urine, feces, blood, semen, nail polish, makeup, and bandages. It is important to note that the body cavities can be stuffed to prevent leakage with either gauze or cloth. Now to review bathing the body. Remember that bathing the body is highly recommended, mustahab, but not mandatory. The water should be cool. Be sure to use non-animal soaps and shampoos. Replace the wet towels on the body with dry towels. And lastly, clean or change your gloves. Next, make tahara of the work area in order to prepare for the mandatory ritual ghusl process. Remember that everything you have learned thus far is in preparation for the mandatory ghusl. Please be sure to maintain tahara throughout this entire process. It is not required for the washer to have wudu. They need not be in a state of ritual purity to perform the ghusl. The mandatory ghusl consists of 3 washes. The first rinse is with a berry leaf called sidr. And why? The reason that we have discovered is that the berry leaf, or sidr, acts as a natural antibacterial retardant, which, in days of past, would have protected the corpse from decay. The second rinse is performed with kafur, or what we call camphor. The reason why is because the camphor acts as a way to keep the smell, the unwanted smell of a decaying body away. It masks the smell. Also, it is said that the camphor is the smell that is appealing to angels. The third rinse is a plain water rinse, and the reason is because water is used in Islam as a universal purifier. Please remember that the body should face the direction of Qibla, or Mecca, by turning the deceased so that the soles of their feet are facing Qibla, as though they were about to pray. The ghusl has a mandatory process that we call tartib, which means that you begin with the head and neck and then move to the right side and then to the left side. The water that is used must be cool, and the water must flow from a running source. The solutions that we use, the sidr and the camphor, must be balanced so that it's neither too much sidr and camphor nor too little. This is sidr. It comes in a leaf form and it comes in a powder form, and for the most part it's imported. Strong antibacterial. Now I'm going to prepare the first rinsing, and Nadia's going to switch her gloves or wash her gloves. There are a few laws around preparing the water. The first is that the water has to be cool. The second is the water has to come from a running source. If it weren't coming from a running source, in other words, if you had stale water that's been laying around, then that has a different law. But that's too detailed for purposes of today. But what you want to do is, in order to make this meet the laws of the ritual wash, it has to overflow. The water should be neither too diluted nor too concentrated. And this is exactly what it should look like. When you look at it, you're in that moment of, it's neither this, it's neither that. It's almost like when you can tell when the moon in the night kind of phase in, like at the time of Maghrib. It's neither night, it's neither day. It's that concept. It's very unique. It's balanced. Everything in the faith is balanced, and this is one of those balanced things. I am doing ghusl for her. It doesn't matter what language you say it in the world. God understands all of our tongues. It's the intention that has to be made. So I'm going to make my intention to do ghusl for her. I am not doing ghusl, تغتسل, not اغتسل. تغتسل. She's getting washed. So تغتسل, which means she receives her ritual wash from the condition of the departed soul or death in order to gain nearness to Allah, to God. And we commit ourselves to this washing as a service to God and a service to Salihah. Okay? So I would begin. And I would say to her, I would talk her through the whole thing. So, because there is a transformation. There's a miracle that happens during these moments. And those of us who've been doing ghusl for many years, we see the transformation, and it is real. It's not explainable, and I know it makes no medical sense, it makes no scientific sense, but there is a transformation, and even non-Muslims who experience or watch the ghusl see the transformation happen. It's something, it's a spiritual aura that happens. Again, unexplainable, but 100% there. There's a relaxation that overtakes the soul and the body, and you can feel it. There's no doubt about that. So I would say, Salihah, ask her permission, and I would begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Quran would be playing, or I would be reading dua. Any dua that you wanted to read. Do the whole head. A lot of times the nose is already sealed and the eyes are sealed, especially in America. But if they were not sealed, you would pinch the nose and then pour the water. We always begin with the right side. And what we're going to do is Nadia is going to pretend that she's following and carrying the limbs for me as I go. Okay, so the neck, making sure that we get the whole neck and all. Very carefully going across the chest. Very carefully making my way all the way down the arm completely. Now you can't see what I'm doing, but what I do is I put my hand underneath the limb, because that way I know that the water has reached the whole limb. So that if I couldn't turn the body too often, because it may leak or things may happen to it, I know I've reached the area. So I do it this way so that I have I'm assured that I've reached every part of the body. Go all the way down. Obviously, we would be reaching the tips of her toes. Nadia will go to the other side. We're going to gently turn you, Salihah. Please forgive us. Just enough to be able to get the back side. Make sure that we've gotten the back of the head, And I already have gotten the leg, but I can follow through. You want to make sure, we have our arms tied, but you want to make sure that you get under the arms. Every piece of the skin has to be washed, right? And it should be done in a continuous way. Saliha, we're going to turn you over. Making sure that we reach especially this part of her back, because the legs we really already have gone, so technically we could stop right here. I've never run out of water. I always have extra water. So what we do with the extra water is I don't like to waste any of the water. So we tend to look away, and we tend to use the extra water for the genitalia. And the first rinse is done. If the body's been shipped, it will be stiff. It may even be in a plastic bag. The person still may have their clothing on. And it's a little bit hard to see because the body has to be shipped from someplace. So let's say the body was coming from another state. It would be in a zip-up bag. That's really hard for me personally. There's a concept that we call bag and tag in the hospitals, where you put a person in a bag because their body fluids could hurt those who are taking care of them, and also they have to have their identification on them. It's usually on their toe. And the first time that I saw that, I was determined that that wasn't going to happen with people that I would be taking care of. So if I could avoid that process, I would. And so for many of our patients, Muslim patients, what we advocate is that the funeral home is called right away. In most hospitals, you can stay up to 2 hours in a room before you have to be taken to the morgue. So you don't have to be bagged and you don't have to be tagged. That's the most ideal way to receive a body. If I run into a problem and there's bleeding or there's feces, stool that begins to come out, because that can happen as well, then I stop what I'm doing. I have to rethink my options. Depends on what part of the ghusl I'm in. I may need assistance from the funeral home director to come back in and stitch something or pack something, pack the behind or pack the nose. And so sometimes we do have to do some work if things aren't smooth.
Do you press the belly to...
We try not to press the belly too much. It depends. They press the belly in the beginning to release the air. But during the ghusl, gases form right away, and that's why you want to be careful not to turn unless you really have to, and as little as possible, because the minute you turn, those gases are there, and they can be released. If it's just air, and there's no material, no stool, no feces, it's not a problem. But if there is, then you have the additional responsibility of trying to fix that, clean it up, make things tahed again, and begin. So it's a little bit problematic. A lot of times we stuff the cavities, the genital cavities, so that we block that problem from happening. But the water still has to be able to reach the outsides. Let's review the sidr rinse. Remember to mix the sidr in cool water. The water must come from a running source. The water must overflow the bucket. The water should be neither too diluted nor too concentrated. Begin by washing the whole head and neck. Next, wash the right side and entire length of the body. Next, gently turn the body and wash the back side. Then proceed to the left side. Use extra water to be sure the private parts are clean. The second rinse is camphor or kafur, and it is a substance that is harvested from the camphor tree. It is a eucalyptus smelling substance, and it comes in a cake-like tablet that needs to be crushed or pounded until it's finely ground. Some of the camphor needs also to be placed on the side for later application to the 7 points of prostration in prayer. This is a process that we call tahnit and will be later demonstrated during our session on applying the kafan. Camphor acts as an antibacterial. So since Muslims and even Jews have to bury before the next sunset, and because we have so much dignity for the dying, we don't want their smell to come out. And if you do not need to embalm, you do not embalm. So what we've discovered is that if you study the history of camphor, it's an antibacterial, so it retards bacterial growth. The camphor is always tricky because it doesn't dissolve as nicely as the cedar leaves do. Still a little too warm. When you have gloves on, it's a little hard to tell. But while I work on it, let me give you the right temperature. Saliha, this is your second ghusl. We wash you with your second rinsing from the condition and the departing of the soul in order to gain nearness and closeness to Allah. All the way down the hand, come back. I'm going to go a little bit quicker like I normally would. Lift up the leg, all the way down the leg. Right side first. And obviously, just because in Islam we believe that, not that the left side is not good, but just that our angels, we receive our good deeds to our right, and there's a right-sidedness to Islam. Making sure that I got underneath the shoulder. I'm separating the armpit, getting under the armpit, the full arm. The full breast. Making my way all the way down. At all. And I tend to cradle the head when I turn. And I turn very, very gently so that they can even hear me reading dua, reading Quran for them. And I do. I'll read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakun. And I tell the soul, don't be scared. It's okay. You're fine. We're with you. You're going to be fine. Allah is with you. Because they are such a frightening, uncontrollable moment. So the second ghusl is done. We'll take the rest of the water and we'll just put it here in the private area. Let's review the camphor rinse. Remember to crush the camphor until it is finely ground. Place some camphor on the side for later use. Mix the camphor in cool water. The water must come from a running source. The water must overflow the bucket. The water should be neither too diluted nor too concentrated. Begin by washing the whole head and neck. Wash the right side and entire length of the body. Gently turn the body and wash the back side. Proceed to the left side. Use extra water to wash the private parts. The last and final rinse is always plain water. In the event cedar or camphor are unavailable, plain water can be used in place of them. In this final rinse, since there is no solution that needs mixing, plain water is taken directly from the hose or could be taken directly from a sink using a bucket. The third rinse should not be so intense that it washes away all of the soot and camphor. You're receiving your third rinse, your third ritual wash for the departing of your soul in order to attain nearness to Allah. Same thing, very, 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 very gentle. The nose, clip the mouth. Be careful that you're not getting stuff inside the cavities because it will leak on your kefan. That's the problem with it. All the way down the arms, all the breast completely. Nadia lifting the leg for us. Many times I'm able to not have to turn because the water has reached the back. So that is possible. Saliha, we're going to turn you, Habibti. You're okay. Alhamdulillah. And then to complete the private areas with the water. Our ghusl is complete. Let's review the third and final rinse. Remember that the third rinse consists of plain water. The water must be cool. The water must come from a running source. It is important to note that if a hose is not available, a bucket can be used and must overflow. Begin by washing the whole head and neck. Wash the right side and entire length of the body. Gently turn the body and wash the back side. Proceed to the left side. Use extra water to wash the private parts. So what we want to do is we want to now dry the table. And to dry her, it's very important that if you could, it's recommended to keep some of the water on her. So I pat dry and I never rub, never hurt, never cause pain. So what I would do is I usually just cover the body like this. I slip those towels off that I've been using. Saliha, Mubarak. And I always congratulate them because I think it's worth congratulating. That now, inshallah, God willing, she feels comforted, she feels better, she feels relief. I often think that sometimes here in America that maybe we have in many ways more respect and more understanding around the philosophy of end of life. Maybe because life isn't so traumatic here, it isn't so war-driven, and there isn't as many catastrophes as there may be in other Muslim countries where this is something that is done with dignity, but maybe here we tend to focus a lot more on details. So in order to maintain the dignity, I usually use cotton or a cloth or anything that I could to just cover the genitalia so that it's covered like this. And Nadia, I'm going to ask you for a second piece. And a third piece. Thank you. Under the arm? No, that's okay. I'm going to have Nadia further dry the table on her side. And I'll dry the table because to have it wet is going to be a problem for the kafan. You can see even we take a lot of care to be careful how we even use the towels. And after you do this 2, 3, 4 times, you've got it, and you'll develop your own style. So Habibti Saliha, Habibti is a term of endearment in the Arabic language, and it's just one that I've always used, but it could be used in any language. I tell her that I'm drying her eyes and her ears and making sure that I'm drying the water out of her ears and her neck, and taking her hair and making sure that her hair is dry, because the hair can give you problems. So we do take care to dry the hair. So once she's nice and dry, and everybody's usually pat drying a different area, she's ready for her kafan. She's ready for her beautiful clothing, is what I call it. And so I will go ahead and move this away, because why would I want to move this away from the sink? I don't want the kafan now to come in contact with anything, right? So I want to protect the kafan. And we're going to put it right here. I'm going to lock this. And I'm going to switch my gloves, because now I'm going to move to kafan. My gloves are clean, but I just tend to be overly cautious about everything. So I'm going to switch my gloves because they're wet and all. Get rid of my gloves, and I'm going to re-glove. Let's review the mandatory ritual ghusl process. Remember to keep the private parts covered throughout the ghusl. The sidr is the first rinse. The camphor is the second rinse. Plain water is the third rinse. After the rinses are complete, dry the work table and carefully pat dry the body. Remember, tahara needs to be maintained throughout. In the beginning of this demonstration, you observed us preparing the kafan. Under Islamic law, there are 3 mandatory pieces to the kafan. However, you are allowed to use more, but you are not allowed to use less. The 3 mandatory pieces are as follows. The mizad, which extends from the navel to the knee. The second piece is called the qamis, which acts as a shirt and extends to the shoulders and should go past the calf, but it's best that extends to the feet. The third piece is the izad, and that is the sheet-like wrap that must be long enough to overlap and to cover the full length of the body. The kafan must be free of impurities. If during the ghusl, the kafan becomes impure with either blood or leakage, bodily fluids, then you must wash that piece of the kafan and or cut that piece of the kafan out and continue with the process of placing the kafan on. If you remember, a while back in our demonstration, I told you that you must take the camphor and make it finely ground and place on the side. Now is the time where we will take the camphor and we will use it in an Islamic process that is called tahneet. Tahneet is a mandatory part of the ghusl. It would require that we would put the camphor in the 7 places of prostration, which would include the forehead first, and then, not in any specific order, the palms of the hands, the 2 knees, and the 2 big toes. Saliha, we're going to prepare your kafan for you. We're going to put your new clothes on you so that you will have a new outfit. And inshallah, the outfit will be one that will be mubarak for you, be a blessing for you. Again, the power of the kafan is really something because it equalizes between humanity, right? So everybody gets a kafan in Islam, unlike other traditions where you can put on your best suit. The issue that I have sometimes is that all around the world, people fear the dead. And I was taught that you should fear the living because the living can hurt you. But the dead cannot hurt you, and they deserve your attention. So there's no fear. And the idea is that Islamically, nobody has to look good for us. With all due respect to other traditions, she doesn't have to put her nail polish on or fix her hair or put her makeup on or set her, which is very dignified for other traditions. But because we accept the condition of the body, because we accept death as a transition for an eternity, it's not about looking good to make me feel better so that I can accept her death. Oh, she looks so beautiful. For us, it's about the natural beauty that comes along with the simplicity and the equalization of humanity in death. So I'm going to take her diaper first, and I'm going to have Nadia get her chest piece. Sayyid Saliha, I'm putting your first piece of your kafan on. A kafan is technically 3 pieces. If we're shipping somebody overseas because they wish to be buried in another country, then this procedure is a little different because it requires packing a person and putting them in plastics. And so that their body doesn't leak from the altitude, they would be in a plastic bag. Plastic pants would go on first, and then a whole plastic outfit, and then I would put the kafan on top of that, so that if there was any leakage, or even if a body was really leaky, and I couldn't contain the fluids, and there's going to be blood that's going to come out of the body, which would then violate the kafan. So in that case, I may use plastic, or I may use pants or something, and then put the kafan on. The idea is that we want to protect the kafan itself. Saliha, we're putting your second piece of your kafan on. The way that I do this, you develop your own techniques over time. Probably, again, a nursing thing. But I take this piece of material and I tuck it under the arm. And that's why I like it big. I tuck it under the arm, and then I bring it, we'll do one at a time, Nance. I bring it forward, okay, and I can cover this. Because sometimes what happens is when you're going to do the hijab, this is problematic. So this kind of gives you an extra covering. So I'm going to have Nadia, did you do it on that side? Okay, Saliha, or maybe should be more gentle with you. Okay. And I like what it creates. I like that it creates a nice, clean fit for us. After all, we spend so much time getting dressed in our lifetime. If this is going to be your last outfit, I believe it should be done with class. We then would move toward putting her pants on. Now, this is not a mandatory piece. We could have, a piece from here to here, and we could have the piece from here to here, and then the dress. I'm going to do the other one. I've learned a trick. We can either turn, or I come to this end, and I'll have Nadia lift both of the legs up so they don't have to turn too much, and we just slide, which is easier. Next is her dress. And I believe that you should train your children because the generations need to learn how to take care of all of us. And so I have no doubt, inshallah, Allah gives us both long life, but I'm not worried about who's going to be doing my ghusl, because I know that Nadia will know how to do it and will care for me as much as we care for other people. Saliha, you're looking so beautiful. MashaAllah. Very beautiful. Isn't she? Arusa. Like a bride. It really is transformational. It's just very transformational. Now, people do ask, has it ever happened that a dead body has sprung back? Not in this room, but I have had that experience in the hospital, and that's very soon after death. And that's just because the nerve, the spinal cord is shrinking, which causes a rubber band effect. Would it scare you? Of course. I've never seen it happen here. Never, never. And so by that time, I think everything, by the time they get to us, everything is where it needs to be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to roll this piece. Some more. Okay. And I'm going to come around. I'm just going to kind of tuck, very gently tuck. And then when I turn her, I'll be able to pull it out. Okay, I'm going to ask Nadia to go to the side. Saliha Habibti, I'm going to turn you. Okay? All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah, Bismillah alayki, Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And I'm constantly, because I speak Arabic and most of the people who I wash do, I'm oftentimes just, saying things that, samhuna, forgive us, constantly speaking to them. See how easy that is to do? It doesn't require much lifting. Very dignified. Beautiful. So Nadia will go ahead and begin to put the kafur in the places of prostration because of where we pray. So the forehead and the right palm and the left palm and the knees and the toes. Sometimes it's difficult to keep it on, but we manage. Try to put it right inside the palm. Her hands are smaller, so she can get into the knees. And after we put it, we usually do cover the toe. Tip of the toe. I assume that's the tip of the toe, right? The big toe. So what's left? Saliha's hijab. So here's my training lesson. This is what I say to people. Now, hijab is a controversial issue in this country, right? Everyone thinks that we're oppressed because we wear it. There's all kinds of ideas and notions about this idea of head covering. But for us, we know that it's a lot deeper than a scarf. But my point is, at this point in time in life, what I say to people to encourage them to this idealism of hijab is that while you are alive, you have a choice. But once you are in this situation, the choice has been relinquished. And while I am honored to put it on you, I surely wish you would have chosen that yourself. It makes it a little bit easier emotionally for those of us who then put it on, because it is going to go on. And so, but I do consider it a place of extreme honor when we put hijab on. So assuming that this is her head and hair, what I do actually is I create a little headband, because it's so hard to keep these hijabs on. They don't have to be material like this. In my own kafan, I have a piece that's like this, because I don't want Nadia or whoever's washing me to have to struggle with this hijab issue on me. I just want to make it easy. So I would pull all her hair back, and this is her forehead. So I'm going to lift her head, and what I'm going to do is, you can, but you don't want to cause any pain. So be careful, just so you're not causing pain. That's the most critical point, is not to cause pain. So I usually just turn it in, bring it around, and then I'm able to tuck it. Or sometimes I actually tie it. Depends on whether or not I'm struggling with it. But what's very helpful is when you take this piece and you hold it in place. So usually I tend to try to put it so it's not right behind her head, because I don't want to cause her pain. So I kind of tend to just put it to the side. So now Saliha is all set. And so then what we do is we come to her and we ask her forgiveness. Again, ask her to forgive us for anything that we did that injured her or caused her pain, anything at all. And we ask that she keep us in her dua. And then we take these two pieces, and you can cross them both together, but I like to tuck the body, so I like to do one at a time. Do you believe me when I tell you this is transformational? It is. And take the first sheet of that, kafan. I tend to lift the legs, tuck very nicely, and then finish. The kaffans can be any color. In the past, we used to use white with green. The first one was white, and the second one was green as a symbol of Islam. And the material was very expensive, and so we now just use plain white sheets. Because the idea is not that we go down with expense, that we go down as much humility and humbleness as is possible. So when they teach us in Islam that what you leave with are your deeds and your kafan, this is a perfect example of what we leave with. Let's review putting on the kafan. Remember that the kafan consists of 3 mandatory pieces: the mizar, which extends from the navel to the knee, the qamis, which extends from the shoulder to the calf, and the izar, which is used to wrap the entire body. Please remember to place the camphor, kafur, at the 7 points of prostration to complete the process of tahnit. Put on the hijab. And finally, dress with the last wrap, which is mustahab or preferred, but not mandatory. After the ghusl and shroud, the person should be buried directly in the ground without a casket or a barrier. The reason is because God created us from a clay-like substance, and to the earth we shall return. However, since this is not a common practice in the United States of America, the person is turned in the casket on their right side, facing the Qibla or direction of Mecca, and then dirt from the earth is taken and placed underneath the cheek to replace the practice of direct burial into the earth. We must remember that the person who is deceased takes nothing with them except their kafan and their good deeds. What is allowable, however, would be some twigs or branches from a tree. We would now get her ready to put her in her casket. So we're going to pretend that this is her casket. And so I would cover her face, and this is always a difficult thing for me, but I would cover her face and ask her forgiveness because I'm covering her face. And telling her goodbye again, and hoping that she's relaxed, which there's a transformation, so I tend to feel like they really are. And I like to put them in the caskets while I'm here. That way I know what they're going to look like, especially for the family. Someone asked me, I did come to this side, and normally if we could carry the body, there was 3 or 4 of us, or sometimes the family comes, this is the best time to call the family in. The sons, the brothers, whoever want to participate, because it's healing for them, and let them be a part of this part of it if they couldn't be a part of the washing itself. The way that we would do this is we put our hands completely under. One person usually takes the head and several take the body, and we hug the body and we turn the body toward us and we begin to say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. God is great, there is no God but one. And we recite that chant until we get to the casket itself. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salih Samhina Habibti. Please forgive us. We're lifting you. We're going to lift you gently. We're going to take you to your casket. La ilaha illallah. Say it with me. La ilaha illallah. 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 We gently place her. When we bury to the right side. This is the time where I would prepare the casket. I would fluff the pillows down there in the casket, or if it's a wooden casket, whatever it is, and I would take the opportunity at this point to turn the body, embrace it with something behind it. This way, when they get to the cemetery, if they're being buried here, the body's already set and ready to go. Nobody needs to touch the body. I'm very fussy about the touching of the body once it's done and it's prepared. If there was going to be viewing, some Muslims believe that it's okay to see the face, and some Muslims believe you should not see the face. So, especially the female. Myself, I don't want my face shown. I want a closed casket. I've already requested that. So they know. But if it were the request of the family or of the deceased, then I would take this opportunity to go ahead and set everything in place so that nobody has to touch anything. And the body would tend to look like this in the casket. This is what a ritual washing would look like. Usually 40, 45 minutes. It doesn't take so long. And then we read Surah Al-Fatiha all together. And everybody, each washer individually says their goodbyes. We allow them that time and space because you never know where the connection is going to be. Let's review placement in the casket. Remember to first cover the body and face with a kafan wrap. Then carry the body to the casket. It is recommended that the family assist. It is also recommended to chant, God is great, there is no God but one. Make final preparations of the body inside the casket if the person is to be viewed. If the person is not to be viewed, place the deceased on their right side, facing the Holy Land of Mecca. Place dirt from the earth under the right cheek. Tayammum is a mercy and an alternative to the mandatory ghusl. It is for the ease and comfort of the deceased. Tayammum is a wash or a ghusl without the use of water and takes really only minutes. Clean dirt or pure sand can be used in place of the water because they are considered to be universal purifiers. Tayammum is used when a mandatory ghusl causes more harm than good. Such examples would be a burn victim, people who may die in an explosion, chemical burns, or even when the opportunity for ghusl and water is unavailable, such as in the case of war. Often babies are given tayammum because of the tissue sloughing and sensitivity of their skin from being in the uterus prior to their birth. There's two ways to do this. If the body is limber enough, then the person who is deceased would do the tayammum for themselves. If their body was not limber enough, then you would do it for them. And it's a very simple thing. So what I would do is I would take just a little bit of the earth. Now what are we doing? This is replacing the wash. This is in the event you cannot wash. You just need a little bit of dirt, and the dirt should be very pure. See how pure it is? There's nothing in it. It's just pure. So if she could touch that, she would touch them. She would take the dirt on her hands, or I would do it for her. And you would start at the forehead, so it would be right here. I would start here for her, and I would go down on her face completely, and then her hands. That's it. That's tayammum. Let's review tayammum. Remember that tayammum is done in place of the washing by using pure sand or dirt. Tayammum is performed by wiping the forehead, face, and back of the hands. The circumstances for tayammum include severe damage to the body, such as with burn victims, when water could cause more harm than good. When water is not available, tayammum is frequently used for fragile fetuses and infants. The ghusl of an infant is mandatory when the fetus is 4 months in uterus or the fetus has distinct features of a human being, such as eyes or ears. In other words, there has to be form. Both male or female can perform the ghusl of an infant irregardless of the sex of the infant, in fact, even on a child up to the age of 6. It takes one, sometimes two people to wash an infant in much less time. I do encourage family members to hold the baby once the baby has been placed in the coffin to help with bereavement and closure. Additionally, the baby does require a Muslim burial. Babies are very hard to do, but they're very rewarding to do because they're so angelic. They're just so beautiful. And oh, it's just incredible. It's just really beautiful. So I'm just, for the sake of time, I'm going to let you hold this for a second because this would be the clean coffin. And I would come in and do exactly the same thing. This is a soul. So the soul understands. I treat this soul like I would treat that soul. So age isn't an issue when we're doing ghusl. But I would pick this baby up very, very gently, do the same thing, inspect the baby. But the way that I do the babies is because they're so frail, especially if they're 3 or 4 or 5 months in utero. They've died inside the womb. They're very flimsy. Their hands fall to the side. It's a little bit hard to manage. So the way that I do the babies, I usually have somebody with me, but if I don't, I'll manage myself. Depends on how small the baby is. I tend to hold the baby kind of like this. And then I go ahead and I wash the baby's body very, very, very gently, sometimes only with my hand, right? Because there could be sloughing of tissue and things like that. Turn the baby, just wash this very, 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 very gentle. I'll prepare the water. So I'll prepare the sidr. I'll prepare the kafur inside the small little pot. And then let's assume that this was it. Because you don't need much. I would just continue to hold the baby and I would do the sidr like this, right? One side. Until the baby's completely done. Do the kafur, the same thing. take plain water. That would be the third rinse for the baby. And the baby gets the same type of kafan. So assume this is clean. Assume I've dried the baby's sitting on a towel, this is clean, we've done the same concept, right? So assuming this is clean, what I usually do is have one of the assistants, or if I have to do it myself, I do it myself, open. And sometimes I have to create, in this baby's instance, I would open even one more layer. What I tend to do with the babies is create. So, Mama, would you grab that pair of scissors in there? So I'd make the baby a little diaper. I'd use the second piece to make the baby a little, chest piece. And then I often take this piece, cut a little hole there, make a little teeny tiny shirt for our little angel, truly angels. And then proceed to go ahead and do the same things, kafur on the places of sujood, and wrap the baby. We take a lot of time with the babies because sometimes the moms are here. They do want to see the babies. And then we always create a small little hijab. Hi, little love. Babies are so special. They really are just so special. Now, what makes this so important is because you're doing their mother's work, right? Or their parents' work, and that's just so special. So our babies tend to look, when they're finished, they tend to look like this. And this is how we present them to their moms or to their brothers or sisters. We sometimes take these babies into the visiting room. We let the kids hold the baby so that they can feel like they have some closure. If the face is really not in good shape, then we will go ahead and cover the face with the piece of the kafan like this. But if the mom wants to look, and a lot of times she does, and so does the dad, then we help them to do that as well. For the babies, the only very important thing you need to know is they'll bring in a little box. The fund that we have in our organization, Plots for Tots, is for these little tiny babies. So the boxes, they're very simple caskets, or like a bassinet almost, or a plain wooden box. So we just mark where the head is with a magic marker so we know, because they end to close those. Once they're closed, they don't usually reopen those. So even our little babies deserve dignity in death. And that's the beauty, is it's not about the age, it's about the soul. So cute, so beautiful. Let's review performing the ghusl for an infant. Remember to begin the ghusl by preparing the kafan pieces. Then, inspect the baby's body for blood, stool, or urine. Next, bathe the baby if necessary. If not necessary, proceed to the mandatory ghusl. Perform the first rinse with sidr, the second rinse with camphor, and the third rinse with plain water. Next, pat dry the baby. Remember to also place the camphor in the 7 places of prostration. Dress the baby in the 3 mandatory pieces of the kafan. Next, place the baby in the casket. Turn the baby on the right side. Place dirt under the right cheek and mark the head of the casket. While God has instructed us in the care of the dying and the dead, He has also instructed us on care for ourselves as washers. We must face the reality that oftentimes we are not sure about how people have died. And there are oftentimes open wounds, and there are body fluids that can have contamination and microbes growing in them. So therefore, what I am asking is that the washer is careful as to how they take off their protective garments. They should take the protective garments off in such a way that while still gloved, they remove their shoe covers. Secondly, they should remove their plastic gowns from the inside out and take their gloves off from the inside out. Next, they should proceed to wash their hands and their face immediately after the ghusl with an antimicrobial soap. Following all of this, once home, a ritual shower will take place. You've washed the person from the condition of the departed soul, from death. You go take your shower from the same condition. But now the verb changes. It's not تغتسل or تغتسلي, it's أغتسل. And in English, I make my intention to wash myself, the ritual wash from the departed soul in the condition of death to gain nearness to God. And you just take your full shower, head first, right side, left side. Once the body has gotten cold and you've gone your skin has been skin to skin with the dead body, that then transposes the condition symbolically upon you. It's not that you're going to catch anything. It's just that then sets up the requirement for you to do your wash from the condition of death. Technically in America, we rarely ever touch the body cold because we have all these barriers, gloves and all. So some scholars say it's not necessary to go home and have this intention and have to, while others say, but it's a recommendation and it's more about the philosophy than it is about the physical. It's more about the spiritual than it is about the physical. So in technical terms, some may say it's not necessary. I always do, just because for me there's maybe a reminder, or maybe it's closure that was done for them and now this is done for me. Some people have asked the question, well, can you, if you haven't taken a ritual shower from the condition of death, can you pray? Can you nurse your child? Can you cook? Can you still until you've done that? And the answer to that is yes. Because this isn't really about dirty. It's not about anything that's dirty at all. It's about ritual awareness and about spiritual space. What happens in this room stays in this room. And it's a very special, it's probably the most ultimate confidentiality that can happen, because you're able to see things that the community may not know about this particular person, especially mastectomies, and the privacy that, or the way a person died. Sometimes people have died from suicide in very difficult ways. Sometimes people have died in car accidents. Sometimes the head has been decapitated and had to be put back on. There's all kinds of conditions of that human body. But when we leave here, this is the trust, and it leaves with us. When the family says, how was my mother, or how was my sister, or how was my daughter? Your response is, the wash was beautiful, and it always is. They did very, very, very well. When someone has a very special soul, you can tell there's a special aura about that person. I do say that woman feels to me like they had a good life and a lot of faith. They must have done a lot of good deeds because you can really feel it. So if it's something positive, I would say it. Sometimes it's not as positive, to be very honest with you. And you get a sense that the soul is struggling. They're relieved with the ghusl, but you still get a sense of an intuitive sense that maybe this person was still working on a few things or was really struggling to find their peace. So after the ghusl, you can tell that there's more peace, but sometimes we've had these discussions amongst ourselves. You can still sense that there is a difference, maybe. A few things that we must remember in conclusion. First and foremost, what's most important is our own personal intention as one who performs the washing. Our intention is to grow closer to God, to Allah. In Islam, this concept is called qurbat, which means that we make our intention to wash this person, hoping to gain closeness and a newer dimension of love toward our Lord. The washers should really think about their intention and approach this very good deed with the utmost of humility and humbleness. In other words, ego has no place at the table when it comes to washing someone who's passed away. Remember earlier on, we spoke of the wajib kifai, which is the collective responsibility that is placed on all Muslims in the world with regards to the end of life. In today's terms, that would mean that 1.5 billion Muslims are absolved of the duty because someone like yourself may have stepped up to fulfill this obligation. We must also be reminded that there can be no economic goal attached to the washing. The washer cannot get paid for the actual mandatory part of the ghusl, but rather can get paid for the preparation that leads up to the ghusl. Having said that, it is important that we remember the role that family can play. And in Islam, we are highly encouraged for the family to participate and wash their loved ones for a sense of closure and to know that they have done all that they can to complete their responsibility and obligation to the ones that they have loved. We must also remember that our bodies have been given to us as a trust, and that which gives us dignity in life also deserves dignity in death. Therefore, if we have an amputated limb, an amputated arm or leg, or even perhaps breasts due to mastectomies, it is highly recommended to bury those limbs or those pieces of our bodies that have given us dignity. This law applies to the outside of our bodies. It is not applicable to our internal organs. For the washer, the ghusl is a reminder of our own mortality and our transition into the next life. After the ghusl, not only is there a sense of tranquility for the deceased, but there is for the person who performs the ghusl. Our lives are meant to be spent in appreciation and the worship of one God, and the ghusl actually helps us to achieve this. I'm reminded of a verse in our Holy Quran where God addresses the soul, and I am paraphrasing, where he says, "O soul, in tranquility and complete rest, return unto thy Lord, well pleased with thy Lord, and thy Lord well pleased with thee." So ghusl is one of the ways in which we are able to accomplish this goal that we set for ourselves in Islam, which is called salam. The root word of Islam, salam, means peace, so that we should live our lives in tranquility, hoping to accomplish a sense of peace, especially as we leave this world. I thank you so very much. Assalamu alaikum. May the peace of God be yours.